Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I bought 2 tickets back in February for this amazing concert everyone was talking about. $200 each, which was a lot for me, but I've been saving up because this artist almost never tours, and when they do, tickets sell out in minutes. My cousin and I have been planning this for months. Then a couple of weeks ago, my cousin called with bad news. She couldn't make it anymore because of some family emergency, but she told me to keep her ticket and bring a friend instead. She didn't want the money back and said whoever I brought could go for free. I thought that was really sweet of her. I immediately thought of my friend who's always complaining about missing out on good concerts because they're too expensive. When I offered her the free ticket, she was over the moon. She kept thanking me and talking about how excited she was. Finally, something good was happening. The concert was supposed to be this coming Saturday, but then one morning, she texted me about the weather forecast. Snow was coming, heavy snow, with temperatures dropping way below freezing and wind chills hitting zero. She seemed worried about driving conditions. I checked 3 different weather apps and watched the local news. It looked pretty bad. Our area doesn't handle snow well, and I don't feel safe driving in it. The venue is downtown about 40 minutes away on a good day. Taking the train means waiting outside at the station, sometimes for 20 minutes or more when there are delays. Standing in 0-degree wind chill for that long could be dangerous. Uber would cost me at least $150 round trip because of surge pricing and the distance. That's almost as much as one ticket cost. I explained all this to her and said if the weather was as bad as predicted, I'd just transfer both tickets to her name so she could still go. She lives only 10 minutes from the venue, so getting there wouldn't be a problem for her. That's when things got weird. She told me I needed to let her know ahead of time so she wouldn't be scrambling at the last minute. I explained that weather predictions change constantly around here and I wouldn't know how bad the roads actually were until Saturday morning. She insisted that I needed to decide right now because it wasn't fair to leave her hanging. She said she needed to find someone else to go with if I was backing out. Something about the way she mentioned finding someone else bothered me. She was already planning to take a different person before we even knew if it would actually snow. I know she has this other friend she goes to concerts with all the time, and they live near each other. It hit me that she was probably hoping I'd bail so she could have a fun night out with her usual concert buddy. She kept pushing me to just transfer the tickets immediately, saying the forecast was pretty clear. That's when I decided to change my approach. I told her I was going to list them for resale instead and try to get my money back since I couldn't go. Her response was just one word that said everything. She was clearly expecting me to hand over $400 worth of tickets just like that. I asked her if she really thought I was going to transfer $400 worth of tickets to her before the snow even hit the ground, and whether she wanted to buy them herself instead. She didn't respond to that text. Radio silence for the rest of the day. But this morning she texted again with a new offer. She said she'd give me $200 for both tickets since my cousin already said she could have the other one free. I stared at that message for a full minute. She was trying to buy premium concert tickets for half price by using my cousin's generosity as leverage. My cousin offered her one free ticket if she came with me, not if she took my place entirely. I told her that was very nice of her, but pointed out that a real friend would invite me to stay over in case of bad weather, so I wouldn't miss this once-in-a-lifetime concert experience. I mentioned that's what my cousin would have done since she also lives nearby. I knew I was right about her planning to take someone else. A genuine friend would have offered to let me crash at her place so we could still go together. Instead, she was treating this like a business transaction. She didn't respond to that either, which told me everything I needed to know. Later that day, I was telling my cousin about the whole situation. She was furious and said my friend was trying to profit off her kindness. She pointed out that she'd offered a free ticket for my friend to go with me, not to take my place and bring her own friend. My cousin also asked why my friend didn't offer to pay for my Uber if she had $200 to throw around. The round trip would only cost $150. That's when it really clicked. If she was willing to spend $200, she could have solved the transportation problem instead of trying to cut me out entirely. She could have offered to split an Uber or even pay for a hotel room nearby if she didn't want me staying at her place. But she didn't want me there at all. I decided to list the tickets online that afternoon. Within 3 hours, both sold for full face value, $400, just like that. People were desperate for these tickets. I immediately sent my cousin $200 to pay her back, even though she protested. I told her she shouldn't lose money because my friend turned out to be selfish. She insisted I should keep it and buy myself something nice, but I refused. It felt right to pay her back. The best part happened the next day. My former friend texted me asking if I really sold those tickets because she was going to offer me more money. I told her they sold for full price in 3 hours because lots of people wanted them. She complained that I could have just given them to her like I promised. I explained that I promised she could come with me for free, but I never promised to give them away if I couldn't go myself. She tried calling after that, but I didn't answer. Some friendships aren't worth saving. The snow did come Saturday night just as predicted. 6 inches with brutal wind. I stayed home with hot chocolate and watched movies, perfectly content with my decision. Meanwhile, she probably spent the evening explaining to her other friend why she couldn't get the tickets she'd been bragging about all week. About 6 months ago, I noticed a lump that wouldn't go away. After weeks of tests and doctor visits, I got the diagnosis that turned my world upside down. Cancer. The word still feels heavy when I think about it. I have 2 young kids, 8 and 5, and suddenly I'm facing chemotherapy treatments twice a week while trying to keep everything together at home. My mom offered to help when I first told her about the diagnosis. She said she'd watch the kids during my treatment days since my husband works long hours and can't always get time off. I was grateful because finding reliable childcare when you're this sick is nearly impossible. Yesterday was grocery day. I spent almost $400 stocking up for the week, making sure to get easy foods the kids could eat if I was too tired to cook. Prepared sandwiches, cut fruit, juice boxes, yogurt cups, crackers, everything they'd need. With Christmas coming up, money is already tight, but I figured it was worth it to have food ready when I felt awful after chemo. This morning my mom came over around 9 to watch the kids while I went to my appointment. She seemed fine, maybe a little quiet, but I didn't think much of it. I was focused on getting through another round of treatment. The chemo session was rough today. 3 hours of sitting in that chair, feeling the medicine work through my body, knowing I'd feel sick for the next few days. When I finally got home around 2 in the afternoon, my mom was putting on her coat. She told me she needed to leave and that the kids had been well behaved. She barely looked at me as she headed for the door. I thanked her for helping and asked if she wanted to stay for coffee. She said no and that she had other things to do. Just like that, she was gone. I felt disappointed but not surprised. She's always been the type to leave quickly, even before I got sick. About an hour later, my daughter came into the living room where I was resting on the couch. She told me she was hungry and wondered if she could have a snack. I suggested she check the fridge because I had stocked it with good food yesterday. She went to the kitchen and I heard the refrigerator door open and close several times. When she returned, she said there was nothing to eat. I asked what she meant since I had just gone shopping. I dragged myself to the kitchen, still feeling weak from treatment, and opened the fridge. It was completely empty except for some condiments and a half-empty jar of pickles. The freezer was the same. All the prepared foods, the lunch meat, the milk, the juice, everything was gone. I checked the pantry next. All the snacks, crackers, cereal, canned goods, gone. Even the bread was missing. I asked my daughter if she had seen Grandma taking food. She said yes and that my mom had been putting things in bags while I was gone. My hands were shaking as I tried to process this. My own mother had cleaned out my entire kitchen while I was getting cancer treatment. She took food meant for my children and left us with nothing. I called her phone right away. It went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times over the next hour. No answer. My son walked into the kitchen looking for his usual after-school apple juice. He asked where it was, and I had to tell him that Grandma had taken it along with everything else. I called my brother, hoping he might understand what was going on in my mom's head. I explained the situation to him and asked if she had mentioned anything about taking groceries. He was confused at first, so I told him the whole story. There was silence on the other end for a long moment. My brother said he didn't believe she would take my food while I was at chemo. He said it was crazy and that she would answer when he called her. 20 minutes later, my brother called back. He said he had spoken with her and she told him she thought I had too much food and wouldn't eat it all anyway. I reminded him that I have 2 kids to feed. He told me he had demanded she bring everything back or pay for it, but she hung up on him. I explained that I couldn't afford to replace $400 worth of groceries so close to Christmas. My brother said he was driving to her house right away because the situation was ridiculous. While I waited to hear back from my brother, I sat on my couch feeling completely drained. Not just from the chemo, but from the realization that my own mother would do something like this. She knew I was sick. She knew money was tight. She knew those groceries were for her grandchildren. An hour passed before my brother called again. He said she wouldn't answer her door even though her car was in the driveway. He left a note giving her 24 hours to return everything or I would call the police. I asked if I should actually involve law enforcement. He said absolutely because what she did was theft, regardless of family relations. The next morning my mom finally called back. She said I was making a big deal out of nothing and that she was helping by taking food that would go bad. I pointed out that she took everything and my kids had nothing to eat. She told me not to be dramatic and said there were stores everywhere. I explained that I couldn't afford to replace $400 of groceries right before Christmas, and she knew that. She suggested maybe I shouldn't have bought so much. I was too tired to argue anymore. I told her to bring my groceries back or I would file a police report. She said I wouldn't call the police on my own mother. I told her to watch me. I hung up and called the non-emergency police line right away. I filed a theft report and gave them all the details. The officer said they would send someone to talk to my mother about returning the stolen property. 2 hours later, my mom showed up at my door with 3 bags of groceries. Not everything she took, but enough to get us through a few days. She asked if I was happy now. I asked where the rest of the food was. She said that was all she had left. She dropped the bags and walked away without another word. I found out later from my brother that she had already eaten or given away most of what she took. I never asked her to watch my kids again. I bought my house years ago after my divorce got finalized. The backyard was a mess when I moved in, but I saw potential in it. I spent months clearing weeds and planting everything from scratch. I created sections for vegetables, herbs, and my favorite part was a flower garden with roses, sunflowers, and purple irises. The only problem was Karen next door and her huge German Shepherd. This dog had no training and Karen let him run loose in her backyard. There was a gap under our shared fence that she refused to fix. Her dog squeezed through it every single day. At first, I tried being nice about it. I found fresh dog poop on my front porch one morning and knocked on her door. I asked if she could keep her dog on a leash or fix the hole in the fence. She told me dogs will be dogs, and I should deal with it. Then she shut the door in my face. The problem got worse over the next few months. The dog dug up my vegetable plants, trampled my flower beds, and left huge messes right by my back door. I had to step around them every morning. I started taking photos and keeping a log of every incident. I tried talking to Karen again and brought printed photos of the damage. I showed her how her dog had destroyed my tomato plants. I told her I had spent a lot of money on these plants. She said maybe I should build a better fence if I didn't want animals in my garden. I reminded her that controlling her pet was her responsibility. I said I shouldn't have to rebuild my fence because she wouldn't leash her dog. She argued that her dog had lived here longer than me and this was his territory first. I contacted animal control since talking to her wasn't working. They said since the dog wasn't aggressive toward people, they needed video proof of him entering my property. I set up a security camera. Within a week, I had clear footage of the dog squeezing under the fence, digging up my herb garden, and leaving a massive pile in my lettuce patch. I took the video to animal control and filed a complaint. The officer went to Karen's house and she got a warning plus a small fine. She was furious about it and came over to yell at me. She accused me of being ridiculous over some plants. I explained that her dog had been destroying my garden for months. I told her I had asked her nicely multiple times to keep him contained. She warned me that I would regret making an enemy out of her. The threats made me uncomfortable, but I figured she was just upset. The dog kept coming over. Animal control returned twice more with bigger fines, and Karen got nastier each time. Then last winter the dog got sick. I felt bad seeing this big animal getting weaker. Even though he had been a problem, I didn't want him to suffer. He died in February, and despite everything, I sent Karen a sympathy card. I thought our issues were over. No more dog meant no more problems, right? 2 weeks after the dog died, Karen showed up at my front door with a strange request. She told me she wanted to bury her dog in my garden because he had loved my yard so much. She said he had spent more time over there than in his own space. She thought it would be perfect if he could rest there permanently. I was shocked and asked if she seriously wanted to bury her dead dog in my backyard. She said she just needed the section with all the purple flowers. She told me I would need to dig up maybe a 6-foot by 4-foot area. She claimed it wouldn't take up that much space. She wanted me to destroy part of my iris garden to bury the same dog that had been ruining it for years. I told her absolutely not. I said it was my garden that I had worked really hard on. She tried to convince me to be reasonable. She said he was already gone now, so he couldn't cause any more problems. I repeated that the answer was no and she needed to find somewhere else to bury him. She insisted the flowers would grow back because they were just plants. I made it clear that it was my property and my garden, and the answer was no. Her face changed from pleading to angry. She accused me of being unreasonable. She said, after everything she had been through losing her dog, I couldn't do this one small favor. I apologized for her loss but told her that burying her dog in my garden wasn't happening. She walked off without another word. 3 days later, I woke up around 2 in the morning to sirens. I looked out my bedroom window and saw orange light flickering in my backyard. My garden was on fire. I ran outside in my pajamas and watched the fire department spray water all over my flower section. Everything I had worked so hard on was either burning or getting destroyed by the water pressure. My roses, my irises, my sunflowers, all of it was gone. The fire chief said someone had started it on purpose. There were cigarette butts found in multiple spots around the burned area. The fire had started in several places at once. My neighbor from across the street came over while the firefighters were still working. He was an older man who sometimes had trouble sleeping. He told me he had seen what happened. He had been sitting by his front window when he noticed someone in my backyard around midnight. I asked if he saw who it was. He said it was Karen from next door. He explained that she had been smoking and walking around my garden area. He watched her drop her cigarette in the flowers, but then she just stood there. She didn't leave until the fire started spreading. The police interviewed him the next morning. He gave them a full statement about what he had witnessed. They arrested Karen at her house that same afternoon. She had been planning this for days. The investigation found that she had bought extra cigarettes that week, even though she normally didn't smoke much. Her phone showed she had been researching how long it takes for garden fires to spread. She got charged with arson, criminal mischief, and destruction of property. The prosecutor said since it was planned ahead of time and happened at night near homes, she was looking at serious jail time. My insurance covered some of the damage, but not the full value of the mature plants I had lost. I'm suing her for the difference plus emotional distress and punitive damages. My lawyer says we have a strong case since there's a clear witness and evidence that she planned it. Her legal fees and potential settlement are going to cost her way more than what it would have cost to just fix that fence gap. She destroyed my garden over a burial site that she could have arranged at any pet cemetery for a few $100s. My dad spent most of the 80s keeping machines alive that had no business still running. The plant where he worked made industrial parts for construction equipment, just heavy metal, grease, and noise. The machines were old even back then. Most of them had been modified so many times that the original manuals were practically useless. but the crew knew them inside and out. They had their routines, their shortcuts, their little adjustments that kept everything moving. My dad was one of those guys. Not the loudest voice in the room, but the one everyone turned to when something went wrong. Things were running fine until corporate decided the plant needed better management. That's when she showed up. Karen walked in on a Monday morning with a brand new briefcase and a degree that was still warm from the printer. She gathered everyone in the break room before the shift started and introduced herself as a new production supervisor. She talked about efficiency metrics and standardized procedures and how things were going to change for the better. My dad and the rest of the crew just nodded and went back to their stations. They'd seen plenty of supervisors come and go, but Karen was different. She didn't just want to oversee things. She wanted to rebuild them from the ground up. By Wednesday, she was already making changes. She printed out fresh copies of the equipment manuals and distributed them to everyone. She said that from now on, every procedure would be done by the book. No exceptions, no improvising. My dad looked at the manual she handed him and frowned. It was the original manufacturer's guide, the one that had been sitting in a cabinet for years because half the instructions no longer applied. My dad pointed out that the manual didn't match the machines anymore. He explained that they'd made a lot of modifications over the years. Karen cut him off. She said that was exactly the problem. She insisted that no one was following proper protocol. She explained that these machines were designed to run a certain way, and that's how they were going to run them. My dad tried again. He told her that some of these steps would cause problems. He reminded her that the machines weren't stock anymore. Karen wasn't interested in debating. She said she came there to fix what was broken, and what was broken was people thinking they knew better than the engineers who designed the equipment. My dad could have argued. He could have walked her through every modification, every workaround, every reason the old manual wouldn't work. But he'd been around long enough to know that some people don't listen until they have to. He shrugged and told her it was her call. Karen smiled like she'd won something. The next morning, she stood at the edge of the production floor with her clipboard, watching my dad and his crew start the main assembly line. She'd already gone over the startup procedure with them, step by step, exactly written in the manual. My dad followed it to the letter. He didn't skip anything. He didn't add anything. He just did what the book said. The machine came to life with its usual groan and rumble. Then it started making a sound it shouldn't have been making. My dad heard it first. A high-pitched whine from somewhere deep in the hydraulic system. He looked at the pressure gauge. It was climbing fast. Too fast. The manual said to let it build to a certain point before engaging the next stage, but the modifications they'd made years ago required venting some of that pressure early. Without that step, the system couldn't handle it. He looked over at Karen. He asked if she wanted him to adjust it. She told him to stick to the manual. He warned her that it was going to jam. She said that then they'd know the manual works. My dad stepped back. 10 minutes later, the line seized up completely. The hydraulic system overheated and triggered an automatic shutdown. The whole floor went quiet. Alarms started blaring. The crew just stood there, waiting. Karen's face went pale. She grabbed her radio and started calling for maintenance. Then she called engineering. Then she called the plant manager. My dad leaned against the wall and waited. It took 2 hours for the maintenance team to get the machine cooled down enough to even look at it. By then, the entire shift was stalled. No production, no output. Just a very expensive piece of equipment sitting there like a dead whale. Karen paced back and forth, barking orders at anyone who would listen. When my dad finally walked over, she spun around and pointed at him. She demanded that he fix it immediately. My dad pulled the manual out of his back pocket and held it up. He asked if she wanted him to follow the manual. Karen didn't answer. She just stared at him. My dad continued. He said that if he followed the manual, it was going to take a long time, maybe the rest of the day, maybe longer, but he could do it the way they'd always done it and have it running in 20 minutes. Karen told him to just do whatever he needed to do. My dad reminded her that's not what she said that morning. Before she could respond, the plant manager walked in. He was a big guy with a gray mustache and a permanent scowl. He looked at the dead machine, then at Karen, then at my dad. He asked what happened. Karen started talking fast. Something about equipment failure and outdated systems and how they needed to invest in newer machines. The plant manager held up his hand. He said he was asking my dad. My dad explained that she wanted them to follow the manual. So they did. The plant manager picked up the manual, flipped through a few pages, and tossed it onto a nearby table. He said the thing had been useless for 5 years. He asked if my dad knew that. My dad said he tried to tell her. The plant manager turned to Karen. He told her that next time she should listen to the people who actually run these machines. He said they know more than any book. Karen didn't say anything. She just stood there with her clipboard looking at the floor. The plant manager nodded at my dad. He told him to fix it his way. My dad walked over to the control panel, made 3 adjustments that weren't in the manual, and restarted the machine. It hummed to life like nothing had ever happened. The line started moving again. The crew got back to work. Karen didn't give any more orders that week. After that, she started asking questions instead. She'd walk the floor with my dad and the others, watching how they did things, taking notes. She stopped waving the manual around. She stopped talking about protocol. She learned. I grew up watching my mom go through 2 pregnancies after me, and that was enough to convince me that I never wanted to experience that myself. When I was 5, I told my mom I was going to adopt when I grew up. She thought it was cute, something I'd grow out of, but I never did. I watched her be pregnant with my younger siblings, saw what it did to her body, heard her complaints about the pain and discomfort. My aunts went through the same thing with my cousins. Every time I witnessed it, I became more certain about my decision. When I got older and learned more about pregnancy and childbirth in health class, my feelings only got stronger. The whole process seemed terrifying. Women's bodies change permanently. Bones shift, organs get pushed around. Some women tear during delivery, others need major surgery. And that's when everything goes right. I couldn't understand why anyone would willingly put themselves through that. And then there were periods like some kind of cruel monthly reminder of what my body was theoretically capable of. Some days the pain was so bad I could barely function. I'd curl up in bed wishing I could just disappear until it was over. I'd miss school sometimes because I couldn't even stand up straight. My mom started dating this guy when I was around 14. At first he seemed okay, but the more time we spent with him, the more I realized how rigid his worldview was. Everything had to be traditional in his mind. Men did certain things, women did other things, and that was that. No room for deviation. He'd make comments about how women belonged in the home, how their main purpose was to have children and raise them. My mom would sometimes push back on these ideas, but she never went too far. I think she didn't want to cause problems in their relationship. What really creeped me out was how he talked about my youngest sister, who was only 3 years old. He'd make these comments about how he couldn't wait for her to give him grandkids someday. She was 3. She could barely tie her shoes, and he was already planning out her future as a mother. It made my skin crawl. He'd also talk about how she needed to learn to cook and clean early so she'd be ready to take care of a husband one day. She was a toddler. Whenever I mentioned my plans to adopt, he'd shut me down right away. He'd say I'd change my mind when I got older, that I'd meet the right person and suddenly want biological children. He acted like my decision was just some childish phase, something I'd laugh about later. It didn't matter how many times I explained that I was serious. He'd wave me off and tell me I was too young to know what I really wanted. He'd say things like, no real woman would turn down the chance to have her own children. That adoption was for people who couldn't have kids naturally, not for someone like me. I tried to explain that there were kids out there who needed homes, who deserved love and stability. He'd just shake his head and say, blood was thicker than water. That I'd never really love an adopted child the way I'd love my own. It made me furious, but I usually kept quiet. My mom would give me these looks that said not to push it. One evening, we all went out to this pizza place. It was me, my mom, her boyfriend, my older brother, and my 2 younger sisters. We'd ordered our food and were waiting for it to arrive when my brother and I started talking about the future. I told him he'd make an amazing dad someday. He had this natural way with kids, patient and kind. He'd been great with our younger sisters, always playing with them and making them laugh. He never got frustrated when they made messes or asked the same questions over and over. My brother thanked me and asked what I wanted for myself. I told him the same thing I've been saying for years. I wanted to adopt a son. I'd always wanted that. Maybe two kids eventually, both adopted. My mom's boyfriend's face darkened right away. He'd been listening to our conversation, and clearly, my answer had set him off. He put down his drink and leaned forward. He told me loudly to be more realistic and to stop talking about adopting kids when I was years away from that decision. His voice carried across the restaurant. People at nearby tables turned to look at us. The whole place seemed to go quiet. My mom looked uncomfortable, my brother stared at his plate, and my younger sisters looked confused. My older sister, who was 7, asked what was wrong. Nobody answered her. Something snapped in me. Maybe it was because I was tired of him dismissing my feelings. Maybe it was because I was sick of him trying to control how I thought about my own future. Maybe it was because I've been holding this in for months, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Whatever it was, I looked him straight in the eyes and spoke just as loudly as he had. I told him that the only way I'd have biological kids is if someone raped me and I couldn't get an abortion. His eyes went wide. My mom reached over and put her hand on my arm. She asked me to please stop talking. Her voice was shaking, but I wasn't done. I'd been holding this in for too long, and now that I'd started, I couldn't stop myself. I told him that the reality of it was that pregnancy is scary and deadly. Women die in childbirth all the time, even in hospitals with doctors. Their bodies get permanently damaged. Some women lose teeth because the baby takes all their calcium. Some develop diabetes that never goes away. Some have their organs prolapse. I'd watched my mom go through it twice, and I'd seen what it does. She still has problems from when she had my youngest sister. I didn't want that for myself, and adoption was completely reasonable. There are thousands of kids who need homes. Kids sitting in foster care right now hoping someone will want them. I asked him why that was so hard for him to accept. Why choosing to give a child a home was somehow less valid than creating a new one. He sat there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He couldn't seem to find words. The people around us were still staring, but I didn't care anymore. My 7-year-old sister asked my mom what grape meant. My mom told her they'd talk about it later. I picked up my slice of pizza and took a bite, acting like nothing had happened. My hands were shaking a little, but I kept my face calm. The rest of the dinner was awkward. My mom tried to make small talk, asking my brother about school and my sisters about their toys. But the tension was thick. Nobody really engaged with the conversation. My brother kept giving me these looks like he couldn't believe what I'd said, but there was also something like respect in his eyes. Later, when we were alone, he told me that what I said took guts, that he'd been wanting to stand up to the boyfriend too but never found the courage. My younger sisters ate their pizza, oblivious to what had just happened. When we got home, I half expected to get yelled at, but my mom didn't say anything. She went to the kitchen and started putting away leftovers. Her boyfriend retreated to the bedroom and stayed there for the rest of the night. I could hear him on the phone with someone, his voice angry but too muffled to make out words. Over the following weeks, I noticed a change. He stopped making comments about my future. When the topic of kids came up, he'd just nod and change the subject. He never tried to argue with me about adoption again. He barely even looked at me anymore. It was like my outburst had finally made him realize that I wasn't going to back down, that this wasn't some phase I'd grow out of. Or maybe he just didn't want another public scene. Either way, I didn't care. The silence was better than the constant criticism. A few months later, my mom broke up with him. She never told me exactly why, but I overheard her on the phone with her sister one night. She was saying that she couldn't be with someone who tried to dictate what her kids should want for their futures, that his traditional views were suffocating, and she was tired of feeling like she had to defend her children's choices. She said something about how he'd crossed a line when he tried to shame me in public like that, how she'd spent the whole dinner feeling humiliated and angry. She also mentioned that he'd been getting more controlling about other things too, telling her what to wear, who she could spend time with, how she should discipline us. She said she felt like she couldn't breathe around him anymore. I never saw him again after that, and honestly, I was relieved. We all were. Even my youngest sister seemed happier, though she probably didn't understand why. My older sister told me she was glad he was gone because he scared her sometimes. Years have passed since that dinner, and my plans haven't changed. I still want to adopt. I'm still certain about my decision. I've done more research now, looked into what the process actually involves. It's not easy, and it's not cheap, but it's what I want. And now finally, I don't have anyone trying to tell me I'm wrong. My mom has even started supporting the idea more openly. She apologized to me a few months after the breakup. She said she was sorry for not standing up for me more when I needed it, that she should have shut down his comments from the beginning. I told her it was okay, that I understood she was trying to keep the peace. She said that was no excuse, that I'm her kid and I should always come first. We're closer now than we were back then. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.